13 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham, with us. James, I saw the merch courtside last night, man. The Kings Beat is blowing up.
Oh, I didn't see it courtside.
Oh yeah, it was courtside. All
Nice.
yeah, is it right along the Kings bench baseline? The Kings Beat shirt right there, and it I caught it a couple of times to make sure it wasn't just like a Kings logo. Like, nope, that's fire right there. That's the Kings Beat.
Oh yeah.
I see you. Kings Beat.
That's nice. That's nice. I also I'll when Kenny gets close to the camera, I know something's going wrong. So anytime he does this, you're like, all right, man. I don't think so.
I'm usually typing something. I'm feverishly responding back to somebody.
Yeah. What's going on, guys? How are you?
Oh, you're listening to D'Lo and Casey along with James Ham here on KIFM West Sacramento, KRXQ HD2 Sacramento, and Odyssey Station, and driven by Lasher's Elk Grove Dodge. James, how many days is it going to take before we get the results of this MRI?
I actually, media relations did tell us, they informed us last night that when Steph Curry rolled his ankle or whatever it was, he got sideswiped by Marcus Smart, that it took 2 full days to get the MRI results, even though they know that they had the MRI that night. So like they were just warning us, like chances are it will be today. I did check in right before I hopped on, and we still don't have anything on Sabonis. So, fingers crossed, man, that, you don't want anything to happen to one of your big name players or anyone at all, but especially not knee issues.
Did you get any vibes yesterday about the injury, about the significance of it? I mean, obviously, nobody will know until we get the actual report, but did you get any feelings from anybody last night after the game?
I was sitting right next to my good friend Sean Cunningham, and he had a very tight, close shot of it, and it just looked like knee-to-knee contact. It looked like it hurts, and he might get a bruise there. But at the same time, I do think that it's I'm hopeful that it's nothing like catastrophic. We weren't hearing that last night, but then again, like they weren't saying much of anything outside of, they're hopeful they're going to, go hit the medical staff hard and get that thing in from MRI. He might have even had the MRI last night for all we know, because it's right there. Like everything is right in the building. So yeah, we're going to have to wait and see, and I'll be checking in all day long to see what's going on there. But, again, left knee, he was able to come back in the game. I was surprised. He's a tough dude. So you just, you're always leery anytime you see someone go down grabbing their knee.
Do you think, and this is the, hot topic, the hot conversation topic on Twitter and podcasts and all that, is it, if all goes well with this MRI and it's nothing catastrophic, is it time to shut De'Aaron and Domantas Sabonis down?
I mean, anytime you get a scare like this, and 2 scares, I mean, we're talking about a hand injury for Fox as well. I think you start to consider those things, especially when you look at your spot in the standings, and at the Kings are now the 5th spot in the draft lottery, which would be tremendous if they can finish there as opposed to even the 6 or dropping down to 7. But at the same time, this team still has a lot of chemistry. Like when you look at 9 games, or is it 9 or 10 that's left? I think it's 9. That's a lot of time by NBA standards to start building even more chemistry, to go through even more play sets that you can try out. And so I would like to see them finish out the season. They're playing really well. Even if they're losing, they still are playing like solid basketball outside of what the Celtics game where, I mean, Jason Tatum couldn't miss at all. And what are you supposed to do? The guy's 6'8", has a high release point, and he's shooting from 27 feet and not even hitting the net. He's just like dropping it through the middle like it's falling from the sky. So, I would like to see them finish out, keep competing, keep showing us that they can build some sort of culture. And, we may or may not get to see that, though.
So James, yesterday after the game, you tweeted out in your 6 points. Well, it wasn't the first point; it was the point before the point. But a quick recap of the game. You said finish out the right way. Wins and losses don't matter at this point, but building chemistry and putting up a fight does. I agree with that. I agree with everything that you just said. I'll ask you the question because I'm starting to feel this way a little bit. Have they already done that? Like, if they already done that, the job in that respect is done. And now you can make sure nothing crazy happens at the end of the season. And like, I feel like the goodwill and the positivity, the chemistry, yeah, it could be fine tuned, but I don't know what another 9 games is going to do more than what they've already done now. They went through a gauntlet for about 6 games, played with each other for about 15 games. I think they are who they are going into this offseason. That would be my argument to possibly shutting things down at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, it's funny. Every time you keep saying 9, I keep thinking like the levels of hell on Dante's Inferno, like the 9 levels of hell. Can we get through? Can we get through the 9 levels of hell here through the last 2 weeks of the season? Like, look, I'm never a full tank guy. I think that there's always value, and I also like. I don't know that we can quantify this, but I always feel like teams who play it out, teams who don't just cash it in, the basketball gods usually give them a little bit up in the lottery. And I don't know what that is, but even the seasons where you think that they're just cashing it in. The problem that the Kings have right now is that they have so many veterans. They don't have young guys. They don't have a bunch of young guys you can just turn this over to. I mean, if we just want to see Neemias Queta start for the last 9 games of the season, that's fine. Like, if Sabonis is going to be out, go ahead and start Queta. That's totally fine with me. But outside of that, what else are you looking at? Like Davion Mitchell, okay, I just ran out of young guys. So there is not a glut of young players. There is no Jemias Ramsey or Robert Woodard. There, even go back to last season, Justin James and DeQuan Jeffries, like all those guys. Yeah.
You're almost going in a different direction. It's like, all right, well, it's Josh Jackson, Alex Lynn, and Mo Harkless getting 40 minutes a night.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Josh Jackson, like someone mentioned that too, and you mentioned that. Like, I guess Josh Jackson you can throw into that. But at the same time, Josh Jackson is a top 4 pick. He's bounced around the league for a reason. Like, you have a good idea what's happening there. When he got to Sacramento and didn't just instantly jump in and start playing major minutes, you kind of understood that the Kings know who he is and that they're not going to sit there and invest a bunch of time and energy into him. And they're going to let him go find his way somewhere else. And that's totally fine by my book. But yeah, they're just really, there's just not a lot of guys to bring up. They still have a 2-way contract that they never used, which is really strange. From when they dropped Lou the King. But now we're just sitting here like wondering, like, that is a spot where they could pull up like a Matt Coleman. If you think Fox is going to be out, like, go ahead and bring him up, reward your guys in your system and see how they look. But they also, I think they'll want to use that 2-way this summer as well, because they have a couple of second-round picks.
And in case you just point this out really quick, because we went over this extensively last week. Tanking, losing the next 9 games, that doesn't do anything. It's down to the Kings and the Pacers. Like, that's essentially it. Like, there's no one else in the conversation for the 5 slot or the 6 slot, and you're not moving up to the 4th. Detroit's not going to start winning. Houston's not going to start winning. Oklahoma City isn't going to start winning. Like, you're talking about the 5 spot or the 6 spot. That's it. It's the Pacers and the Kings.
No, Portland's right there. Portland can lose more games than you. They're a game above the Kings. They could easily lose every game from here on out. Every win that you get at this point could hurt you. I mean, it's good. The Spurs, again, I'll kind of put it on the Popovich thing. The Spurs kept winning here and there, and they took themselves out of the running. But Portland's only a game ahead of the Kings. So you could go from like where you're at right now at 5 to 7 pretty quickly. And that's a pretty big jump in this draft. It is. So
I didn't realize Portland was right there, but that
that
makes sense.
I'm starting to like like I love the top two. I love Jabari Smith, and I'm a huge Chet Holmgren fan. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not a huge Banchero fan, but then this next group is really starting to grow on me.
Indeed.
Ivy, who's the other guy at Duke?
Matherin. Well, AJ
Griffin,
Griffin.
yeah,
Griffin.
and Matherin. I think those three all of a sudden make this closer to a 6-man draft. And I would like to see the Kings if they're gonna have a shot here. I still think that if they're outside of the top 2, 3, they're gonna shop the pick really, really hard. But I think all of a sudden, especially Matherin and yeah, I mean, I like these guys. I do.
Yeah.
I'm starting to fall in love with them a little again. And someone brought up Keegan Murray. I've fallen out of love with Keegan Murray. I'm fine with Keegan Murray at like number 12, but Keegan Murray to me, he just looks like a standard NBA role player and not a top 10 pick, and that's fine. I mean, he's going to be a solid NBA player, but will he be anything more than solid? And I just don't see it. And we saw him again. Just look at him versus Matherin. They both had big moments where they could have stepped up and led their team. One did, and one did not. One completely faded and kind of did what he's been known to do, is like disappear for stretches in a game. So yeah, it's an interesting situation, but I'm okay. I'm okay with playing for a draft pick at this point.
Matherin was amazing last night. Like he would not let Arizona go home. That's the kind of stuff that you're looking for. I feel, especially with a franchise with the Kings, somebody that's just competitive to another degree. And I'm not as familiar with Keegan to say whether he is or not. I've heard what James has to say. I've heard other stuff that has me question it. But you want a guy that's just going to go out there and compete, because that's what's going to take to turn this whole thing around. There's a bunch of competitive dudes. So seeing that last night was impressive. James, I was going to ask you something, but this may be a complex answer here. I might save that one right there with the question. But I'll give you the mini question that I have right here. Damian Jones, feel like he's done enough, man. I want to see Damian Jones back here in Sacramento next year as your backup center. But I think he's done everything that you would want a backup guy to do, that you have to give a little money to. You've seen everything that you needed to see from Damian Jones. I love Damian Jones. I want him to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I dig Damian Jones too, and he's a really, really hard worker. He's a good guy. I think, look, you still have Alex Len under contract for next season, so you're going to have to find a home for him. You still have Neemias Queta coming up, and we don't know what he's going to be. For my money, though, like if you're going to invest in, like, it's probably going to be like a 2-year, $4 million, 2-year, $5 million deal. Then Damian Jones to me makes perfect sense. Like, he plays hard. He's different than what you have in Sabonis. He is a true rim runner type. He can shoot the 3 ball a little bit. We saw that even last night. He had a 3 from the corner. So for me, I'm okay. If Damian Jones is back, that's totally fine with me. You just have to upgrade the roster everywhere. Yeah. And so I'm totally fine with that, especially if you find a home for Rashawn and you find a home for Alex Len. And if I walk into next season, I've got Sabonis, a healthy Sabonis, fingers crossed, and Damian Jones and Neemias Queta, then I think I'm okay. I'm okay there.
James is going nowhere. We'll continue to talk Kings basketball with him, including Kenny's complex question. No idea what it is, but Kenny says it's complex. That's coming up. D'Lo and Casey return here along with James Ham on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. Let's go to 58 here, okay. And then we'll get out. We let James go. We'll come back. We'll do the short break. We'll do the short thing, and then we'll come back, and then we'll have Mark. Okay. Can y'all hit the thumbs up, please? D'Lo, begging for likes. Brought to you by Dave Garcia Designs. Head over to DaveGarciaDesigns.com. We're going to drop our spring collection here in the coming days. Dave designed pretty much all of it. So DaveGarciaDesigns.com has brought you this segment where D'Lo begs for you to like the video that you are watching. Also, if you have not subscribed yet, be a subscriber. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the Kings Beat, you probably already have. But if you haven't, go to thekingsbeat.com and hit the subscribe button. Please.
Do you guys like theme parks and roller coasters?
Nope.
A little bit. I'm not a huge I don't love heights, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not my bag at all. Went to Six Flags yesterday.
Oh.
Let the missus and the son startle the hell out of themselves by getting on that Superman ride. I saw that, and I saw it from the ground. And my son, he's not he's a mix between his mom and me. His mom is a thrill seeker. I'm not, and he's like perfectly in the middle. So he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get on all these rides and get on Superman." And they got in line. I took a look at Superman. I said, this might be the last ride he gets on today.
Nope.
Sure enough, he came off that ride looking like he had seen a ghost. He's like, I don't want no. I think I want to go get something to eat now. Like he's not. But to his credit, got back on the horse, got on the Batman ride. I got on with him, so I got
Did he hit a jack in his baseball game?
He did, man. A little grand slam action, big time hit. I think they were down 11-5 in the final inning when he hit that. That got it to 11-9 and kind of gave them new life to tie it up. They ended up losing in the bottom half, but they were down 7-1 and then I think 11-3 a couple times in that game. And yeah, a little grand salami. Yes, I am the father that is keeping all his stats all the way down to his warp or VORP or whatever.
You're doing the math. You're plugging it into some program.
If little Johnny was starting at second base, his replacement would not be what Reese's. No, I don't go that far. But yeah, I'm keeping the batting average, the homers, the RBIs, runs scored.
Yeah.
The Lakers are really the 10th seed. That is incredible.
I told you guys that if anyone wanted to win, they could have taken out the Lakers. The Lakers were the team that was always going to fall. They are so bad.
The Spurs,
they're train wreck.
Got a chance. Spurs,
they do.
They always got a shot.
Yeah.
What a game
I looked today
too. 2 games.
Portland still. What's that?
2.5.
Oh, okay.
Game and a half.
Yeah.
Oh, 2.5. 2.5.
2.5.
Yeah, and Portland has, I think they still have 6 home games. Like the Kings are down to 2. They've got a ton of home games. And, they like showing up at home because they have a great crowd up there. But, yeah, that Lakers team is a mess. This was, always just sitting there for the pickings.
Mm-hmm.
But, yep.
Yeah.
You couldn't get out of your own way.
Oh, I got a complex question for you. I don't think we asked you this. I think we asked this to each other. It's a good one. I think it's a good one. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Are you going to hit me with it or no?
I might hit you with it on the radio.
On air. Oh.
We got to save something. We got to save something for the radio audience now.
There we go.
Oh, I forgot my tease. I'll tell you guys will get a chuckle out of this one.
Wait, what tease?
The story I had to tell you on the air.
Oh, the story. That's right. Oh, that's right. We didn't pay that off. We're coming back here.
All right.
And just casually sitting around with the King's best insider waiting for MRI results to come in. Talking basketball while we wait. James got his phone in his hand. He's been known to break news. He broke the Rashawn Holmes news here on Friday to find out he was stepping away. And now we're just waiting for the results of Domantas Sabonis' MRI, which we've been warned we might not get it today, which I think we as Kings fans are kind of accustomed to. It took days to get news on Tyrese Halliburton when he hurt his knee a little while back. So we're used to it. We're used to it. I got a question for you that Kenny and I talked about last week, and I don't think we brought it up with you. Would this season, because we were just talking during the commercial break, the Lakers are the 10th seed. Like, the Lakers are legitimately 30-41. They could get caught by the San Antonio Spurs. And James has said for months, if the Kings get their act together, we talk about all these Pelicans and Trailblazers all we want to. They could catch the Lakers. Of course, spoiler alert, the Kings have not gotten their act together. And that kind of leads into this question. Do you think this season would have been different? We could take all of the roster stuff being the same, even down to the trade. Would this season have been different if the text message to you last year was Monty McNair's moving on from Luke Walton, and he had conducted a coaching search and hired a coach at the beginning or to start this year?
Yeah, I think so, because I think this isn't a knock on Luke. I think that the players walked into this season knowing that Luke had a shelf life, and that if they didn't perform, that they didn't win, that he wouldn't be here. And like, I'm not sure that like there are players that said, "Hey, I'm not gonna play hard," and so Luke gets fired. I don't think that was the case. But there's a difference when there's a coach he's entering his third year of a 4-year deal versus a coach who's in the first year of a 4-year deal. And if you don't want to play hard, if you don't want to do the right things right away, then he's going to push for you to leave. And so I do think that plays into this a little bit, just because at the end of the day, like, you're making like a first impression. And so, yeah, I think you're onto something. And I also think that the players heard the same thing that the rest of us did when Alvin Gentry was given the interim tag, and that he wanted a 3-year deal, but didn't get a 3-year deal. And he was told to either take their interim tag or they would hire Doug Christie. And so I think everyone there kind of like, okay, now we know what this season is about. This season is not about wins and losses. It's about trying to get that next big player whatever that costs and whenever it happens. And so, yeah, I think it's an interesting debate and discussion because, this team, like I've said it from the beginning, it should not have been this bad. And, I would still tell you that I don't think that that Luke Walton got really a true fair shake here, because in his second season as the head coach of this team, they had 5 or 6 players. Like, it was a joke. This wasn't an NBA roster at all. And so, like, how do you grade a guy and then give him, whatever it was, 21 games or whatever he got to open the season? Like, how do you grade a guy when you literally threw away one of his seasons? And you didn't even really build with that. I mean, you got Halliburton, but coming out of that, like, that's all there was that was extra. And so, like, really an interesting, like, it's never just one thing. And that's what I try to keep preaching. It's not one bad coach. It's not one bad decision. It's not just Luka over Bagley. It's not, it's a combination of so many things that leads to where you're at. And, like, there's probably 30 people that are completely at fault as a whole, like the group, for a 16-year drought. And it might be more than 30. It might be 50. And that's just the way it goes. It's little mistakes here and there that end up being bigger mistakes down the road and end up costing you. And so now we're seeing sort of, I think we are seeing a full reset. Like, it's not a full reset in the typical way where, you're going all the way young. But, like, I think there's only, 3 players left on this squad from the Vlade Divac's era. Like, that's it. Like, they're all gone. So whatever's here, now we see what Monty is trying to build. And even that, you can see that there's a bunch of veterans on 1-year contracts next season that there's a good chance they won't be here. Like, the Kings have probably, if you throw in Harrison Barnes, you're talking $40 million in expiring contracts walking into the season. So we could see this same exact thing play out again. If they can't be aggressive right at the beginning of free agency and the draft and make the big move that they want to make, we definitely could see the same thing where they walk into a season waiting for some big deal, and whatever that means to whoever's coaching the team or the players that are here, you hope the best, but this is about building something long term.
Yeah, everything that you said makes perfect sense. And like you said, it's not just one thing. I think that group of guys, it was DOA. Like it don't matter who was coaching. Like I think that group was it was a bad mix. They were together. I don't know what goes on with these guys individually. We see Marvin playing good basketball in Detroit. Buddy's been solid in Indiana. Whatever, Fox is taking off. Halliburton, everybody individually good ball players. Collectively, that group, they never had a chance. They were extremely emotionally fragile, where they would let something like the uncertainty of Luke Walton affect how they played. Like there's uncertainty right now, and it don't look like none of these guys are playing any less hard or competing any less or anything like. They just go out there and play. That group, any sign of instability or adversity, they'd fall apart. They'd fall like a deck of cards. And if it wasn't Luke Walton, it would have been somebody, the first time head coach, whatever, trying to change the culture or whatever. I just don't think that group would have done much of anything. And I was wrong because I thought that they were better than what they were coming into the season. But clearly, when we got into the season and adversity hit, they fell and they couldn't get up. Steve Urkel.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I mean, like, they were like DOA. I didn't expect it either. Like, I looked at the roster and I thought, okay, like I see what you're trying to do. But I think like just the little things, the finer nuances of the game weren't there. And then, you had to play certain guys to keep their value up. You didn't play certain guys because you needed to keep their value down. Like this whole entire season has been like one giant yo-yo for a good portion of these players. And I'll say this, there's something I heard when I was talking to someone within the organization the other day, and they said, we think when we made the Sabonis trade, we got 2 All-Stars. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, what do you mean by 2 All-Stars? Because I'm certainly like, not to be mean to Trey Lyles or Dante DiVincenzo, but they're not All-Stars. And it was, no, we think that trading for Sabonis will make Fox an All-Star. And I totally agree. Now, if that's your thought, I agree. And I can tell you that through, whatever it was, 100-something games, that Tyrese Halliburton was not going to make De'Aaron Fox an All-Star. And that's where it really comes down to, like with this whole move. You can say, I don't like the trade because I like Halliburton more than I like Sabonis. But what you have to understand is that the pairing of Sabonis and Fox is so far superior to the pairing of Fox and Halliburton that it's not even close. And so it's not that one player is better than the other, or you can trade or you can't trade one guy. That's just the honest truth. Those 2 guys work together better than the other 2 guys work together. And that's how you move forward. That's how you improve your team. If you can get basically what we're seeing we're seeing 50 points, 17 rebounds, and 12 assists a game between Fox and Sabonis. I mean, that's an incredible duo. Now just build the pieces around it. I can see a path forward that's so much simpler now than the path forward with Fox and Halliburton.
Absolutely.
And if you can't, it's because you're blinded because you loved Halliburton too much. And I mean, it's pretty simple. You surround these guys with shooters. You surround them with long athletes. You bring in guys like Dante DiVincenzo. You bring in better versions of some of the pieces that you brought in. But like I'll even say this. If somehow the Kings would have just made the DiVincenzo Bagley deal at the beginning of the season where you got Trey Lyles on this team would have been, well, he's like 3 times the player that Bagley is. And it's not because Bagley's no good. It's because this team needs a stretch 4 so bad. And that's what Trey Lyles can bring. Everyone defends Trey Lyles in the corner. They defend him all around the perimeter because they know he can hit the three. Well, no one defended Marvin Bagley at all on the perimeter. They didn't even care. So what does that mean? That means that now Rashawn Holmes is almost useless because Marvin Bagley's guy is standing right next to Rashawn Holmes and Rashawn Holmes' guy. So it's just the real basic roster construction of this team that was completely wrong. It was completely wrong in the beginning. And, I mean, that's why Luke Walton didn't play Marvin Bagley a bunch. It wasn't because he hated Marvin Bagley. It's because he didn't fit. Square peg, round hole. And so now what we're seeing is something different. Like if Luke, they would have given Luke a starting small forward and he could have moved Harrison Barnes to the 4, this season probably would have been totally different. And the 3-guard set, if the 3-guard set would have worked, we would have seen a different season. But the 3-guard set didn't work, which meant that Harrison Barnes had to play the 3, and you're just throwing whatever you can at the 4 to try to make it stick. And, again, the stretch 4 in the NBA might be the most important piece that's out there.
It feels like, you just talked kind of glowingly about Trey Lyles and, Dante DiVincenzo. I want to talk more in-depthly about Davion Mitchell coming up here in just a few minutes, but I know we get guilty of, we see these players every day. We evaluate these players every day. We're closer, if you will, to these players than, the people in Portland or national NBA writers. But it feels like, James, that there are some really solid role players here. You have to fill the rest of the starting lineup out with like some stronger caliber players. But Trey Lyles, Damian Jones was the other name up. Damian Jones has a place on this team. Davion Mitchell, like there are guys, of course, Dante DiVincenzo, there are guys here who could be really, really helpful to a team next year as long as the starting 5 is better. Or at least part of the starting 5 is better.
Yeah. Brendan Nunes talks about this a lot on the podcast, that when you add a piece in, it makes the guy who was at that spot. So again, if we're looking at like your third best player in the starting lineup, if you add a better third best player, that means your fourth best player is now maybe in a more comfortable spot. That means that Harrison Barnes is okay if he has a game where he scores 12 points or he scores 0, and you're going to get a 25-point game out of him, but it's okay. But when you don't have the third piece, or so basically when you're playing with maybe 2 legitimate number 2s, or maybe a 1.5 and a 2, and your 2 main cogs and Fox and Sabonis, then what is Harrison Barnes? Is he really a strong third best player? Is he a strong fourth best player? Well, then once we get past that, like, can you say who the Kings' fourth best player is? I don't think you can. I don't think any of us can. And that's a problem. And so when you go out and get someone who is a legitimate number 2 in Sabonis, who has the potential to be a number 1, but really a legitimate, one of the best number 2s that you're going to find in the league, right? And you drop him into the lineup, now you can see how it's different. You can see how you can make some substantial changes and change a direction, and how a player, if you insert a guy, even if it's like a Jeremy Grant, who I think is more like a 3-4 guy, but now if I got 2 3-4 guys in Barnes and Jeremy Grant, now that makes more sense. Like, I just think it's easy. And when that happens, it makes life so much easier on every other player. Now Davion Mitchell can be who he's supposed to be, and Dante DiVincenzo can be who he's supposed to be, and Trey Lyles can be that, that third big, fourth big. Damian Jones can be a guy who comes in and just gives you raw energy because he knows he's only going to play, 12 to 16 minutes a night. It really does set things up. And I think what we did this season is we overestimated the core. That's it. Everyone did it. We all looked at it. We thought, okay, this team could probably win 40, 41 games. We overestimated the core. So those other pieces were asked to do things that they could not do. And that's not their fault. It's the guys above them that weren't good enough to do it.
And when you say something like that, I know a lot of people try to attribute it to local media or fans or being too close. We had our guy Bobby Marks come on here in the offseason. He's going to be extremely disappointed if this team didn't win 40, 41 games. I mean, what we saw on paper was a team that has talent. I mean, I'll even go back to what I said a couple minutes ago. Look at Buddy and Marvin and Tyrese and the way De'Aaron is playing now. Everybody's playing well for the most part. Nobody's playing bad. But what we underestimated was collectively, this one of those things. As a group, this team was when it was constructed that way. They just weren't good as a group. They weren't good together. They didn't bring out the best in each other. To your point, James, about Tyrese and De'Aaron. Tyrese is a phenomenal player. De'Aaron's a phenomenal player. They didn't bring out the best in each other. And that's something that you couldn't really, you could think about it. You could say, hey, I think together it will work. But until you actually saw it on the court, and it was like, oh, no, this isn't really going to work. You weren't going to know. And that's what they found out during the season.
Yeah, I mean, to get like slightly philosophical, it's like if you when you're a kid and you made the you folded the paper up a bunch of times and then you cut it in the shape of a person and you strung it out and you got a bunch of people holding hands.
Mm-hmm.
This team felt like somebody didn't do that. They sat there and cut 15 individual little people and then tried to tape them together. And then they're falling apart. And some of the arms are ripping
visual.
off.
It's just a tremendous. For some reason, and I don't know why, I'm picturing Alvin with like tape, and he's trying to put these little broken arms back together.
And some of them that you got that little brad thing that you push through, and then you bend the things back. Some of them are locked together strong. Some of them are good, and you might have 2 and 3 of those, and you have 2 or 3 that work over here. What you don't have is a collective piece that works together and that holds together. And that's a problem. And, part of it is that you didn't have the glue guy to hold this thing together. That's a big issue. But also you didn't have the strong arm guy who said, like, look, we're not going to let this thing split up. Mm-hmm. And that's what you have to do. That's what you have to. That's why, like, we're watching Mathurin and it's just like, oh, that's a dog. That dude will not lose. He refuses to lose. Go get me that guy. Go get me one of these guys that just, like, you see it. It's oozing out of them. They are fighting the entire time. And again, not to be like harsh on a young guy, but that's where Keegan Murray, like, I instantly saw it. Like, okay, he's going to be a good NBA player. He's not a glue guy. He's not a, like, top end of the rotation guy. And he's not someone who's going to punch somebody in the face when Chimezie Metu gets ripped off a rim. Go get me somebody that will. And I think that's the one other thing you can say about this Kings roster. Davion Mitchell, Dante DiVincenzo, Domantas Sabonis. I'll even throw Trey Lyles in that. He's a nice dude. That guy is thick, and you do not want to mess with him. Like, these are guys that you instantly look and say, okay, this team is not nearly as tough as they were before. And if we got this little everyone holding each other's hands, now I feel like you got enough strong links mixed in that they're going to be able to hold tight enough where this thing doesn't fall apart every time. And that's how you move forward. Now just go get more talent. Go get people that fit what you have to, go get shooters. Go get long defenders. That's what you need right now.
Did you ask your complex question yet?
No.
I'm ready for it. Let's go.
That was a hell of a tease. What's the complex question you were going to ask?
So this came to my mind last night, and I think I know where James is going to go. I think I know where all three of us will go with this one. But it had me thinking. And everybody was talking about Mathurin. Everybody was talking about Jaden Ivey, Jabari Smith the day before. Chet Holmgren, all these guys, even Banchero. People were really excited about the way he played yesterday. And it had me thinking as Kings fans and people who follow the team, would you rather have them trade that pick for an established NBA guy? And I'm thinking John Collins, Jeremy Grant. Or draft one of these players. Because the way I look at it is, I don't think both are happening. Like, I don't think you can get the established guy and keep your draft pick. And if you keep your draft pick, I don't think you have enough to go get an established guy. So I'll start with you, James. Which one would you want to see them go with?
I mean, it really does depend on where you land. If you're
Let's say
number one or
five.
two,
Let's
yeah,
say
if you're
five.
if you're number one or two, it's game changing. I mean, again, I think it's really about the pairing with Sabonis. That's why I completely fall in love with Holmgren and Jabari Smith. I don't like Banchero, not because I don't think he's a good player. It's specifically because I don't think he fits with Sabonis. He's a high usage, high volume guy. He's a ball stopper, like someone said in the chatty house. He's a guy that really it like stops everything. Now, when we get to that next tier, which to me it's shaping up pretty like it's Ivy, it's Griffin, and it's Matherin. That's where the next group really is shaping up. I'm intrigued by all of them. They all fit a position of need. They all work there, but they're all going to take a certain amount of time. They're all very, very raw in what they do. Just it's elite talent, but they're raw, and it's going to take 2-3 years. So you're right. If you can go out and do some major move that gets you some really awesome player, then I think that's the route I go. Just because this team can't keep waiting and waiting and waiting. They don't have enough young players, of course, but they just you have to bring in talent that you know will be good. Where we think that all three of those guys can be really good, but we don't know. And I know John Collins is really good.
Mhm.
And so that's where you're cashing in. You're going to pay more money. You're going to lose years of you know service, basically years of life expectancy, NBA life expectancy. But at the same time, you can improve this roster very quickly with the right pieces. And, again, like I don't mind a guy like Keegan Murray if I'm drafting number 12, number 13. That's fine with me. Like that's where those guys, in my opinion, should go. They're not game changers, but they're solid NBA rotational players that can help a team. But if we're talking about a top 6 pick, even, if it goes 7, 8, 9, we'll keep looking and milling through prospects and seeing who's there. But then that next group of players, they're usually a step down. And again, like Davion Mitchell, it's not that Davion Mitchell's a bad player. At number 9, did you get true value for him in that spot? Maybe. But like that's not a game changer for a franchise.
And real quick, James, I do
Yeah.
want to say this. Let's just all keep the same energy, and let's be real with ourselves. I like him. I like Davion Mitchell. I love him. I think he's a really good ball player. But the way people going on and on about Ivy and Matherin, it's the same thing people were saying about Davion last year. So ask yourself, if you get your Matherin and he has a rookie season like Davion Mitchell, is that good enough to take you over the top? He could be greater than that. He could be less than that. But just remember, a year ago this time, a dog. Like, oh man, Davion is a dog. That's what his team needs. He culture changer, all this other stuff. They say the same things about Matherin right now. So that's when people ask, like, if you have Ice is in here saying, why do we associate draft picks as not being real guys? It's not that. It's just you're seeing them in a different form. The NBA is a different place. You know what I mean? So just because they're, beasting over there, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate to the NBA right away. And right away is the big point for this particular franchise right now.
Yeah, and I'll add the other layer to that question right there, which is Davion Mitchell's 23, and those guys are all 19. So they should be worse than Davion is this year. Worse. And you hope that 2 years, 3 years from now, they're going to be really good. But like it's all speculation. All of it. It's speculative, and you have no idea. And like I've told you guys before, from this moment on, it's only going to get worse because now we're dealing with a COVID time frame where a lot of these young guys, they just don't have the games. They haven't played. They haven't had AAU tournaments. They haven't been able to go to and play as many games as they have in the past. So I just think like we're in a really interesting situation if you're a Kings fan, And if you're covering the team, you're in an interesting situation, like looking at like, how do you build this thing out? How do you build it out without only going old? You still need young players coming up. I mean, we look at, it's the perfect marriage that we're seeing in Golden State, where they're bringing along Kuminga and Moses Moody, and if Wiseman ever can stay healthy, who the heck knows? But you're bringing those guys along slowly while you have greatness all around them, and those players would look so much worse if they were playing for a team like the Kings.
Yeah.
They would. Like Moody, I think projects as a really good player, but he would look much worse. And so if you put him in a Kings uniform versus playing alongside Steph Curry and Draymond Green and all these other guys that they have there, I mean, like it really does. It's difficult to do what Golden State is doing, but it speaks to their culture and everything else.
How do you evaluate Davion's rookie season?
It's difficult because I don't want to fault a guy who's been through 2 head coaches, who's seen all of the players around him quit, who's seen complete roster upheaval, who's seen players that clearly didn't want to be there and were vocal about it, and maybe even a distraction. Like, he's a nose to the grindstone kid who has worn himself out on multiple occasions. When I owned Cowbell Kingdom for years, my partner was John Santiago, who's absolutely incredible, the hardest worker. I would watch him run himself into the ground and then see the cliff coming. He couldn't see it coming. I could. I kept telling him, slow down, slow down, slow down. And then all of a sudden, boom, he'd disappear for like, hey, I need like 2 weeks off. Like, he would just like lose it. I was like, okay, go take your time. Then he would come back and he'd be raring to go.
Kenny, I need 2 weeks off.
Yeah. That's what I see right now with Davion. You see it, right? You have these people that's how they work. They just kill themselves every single day trying to be great, and then they run out of juice. They bury themselves. They can get a cold, and that cold can last 2 weeks. And it's just, that's how it works out with some people. I think he'll learn a lot from this season. I also think you can watch sort of him go like this and start going up, and then boom, he falls. And then you can start watching go up. And those like ebb and flows for him have been pretty extreme. Like going into the All-Star break, he was having a good run. And then right before, he fell off a cliff and then was really bad coming out of the All-Star break. He wore himself out. And now we're seeing him, 5 games in a row in double figures. He looks good. He's shooting every shot he takes. Looks like it's going in. He's got his speed. He's got his quickness. I think we'll see a better version of him in year 2. I'm not going to be too hard on him because, number one, he's an older rookie, or because even if you're an older rookie, it doesn't matter. You're still a rookie. That's why we see Dante DiVincenzo talk about, he called Davion Mitchell a kid, and they're like literally like 14 months apart. I love that kid. It's like, yeah, he's like a year behind you in high school. But there's a big difference when you're in the pro level, and it's a grind and it's an everyday thing. And I don't know, I haven't really dug into him like off the court, what kind of support system he has off the court here in Sacramento. But a lot of these guys, they think that they can fly solo, and it is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. Even if they move out with their girlfriends from college, well, that's probably the first time they've ever lived together. They're like going through normal life at the same time that they're going through, like, you're under a magnifying glass. Everything you do is scrutinized. And so it's a really interesting world that they live in, that, like, I watch it, but like, I can't live it. It's different.
Yeah. I was talking about earlier, I just want to see more consistency from Davion next year. I know myself and Damian, we talked a lot about his role, not being as solidified throughout the year. But I want to see more consistent production from him, especially on the offensive end. I want to see the shot be more consistent, because I was talking about yesterday matched up with what I feel about him. Like, I feel like he he has a decent shot. He works hard at what he does. We all know that's a fact. But it wasn't falling through all the time, right? Like, tell me if you think I'm wrong, but you look at Davion and you know how much he works. You look at his shot. It doesn't look like he should be shooting, having nights where he goes 1 of 15 from the field. Like, he's good enough where it should be happening. Yesterday, it felt like everything matched up in the last couple of games, like you mentioned. But the ebbs and flows that you talked about, I got to see that go away. You know what I mean? I got to see him be more. He doesn't have to score 28 a night, obviously, but a solid 12, 12 to 14 every night, knowing that you can rely on that. I want to see that be the baseline of what he does every night next year in his second year in the league.
Yeah, I mean, and you're talking about the different roles that he's had and the different players he's played with throughout the season. They wanted to do this whole 3-guard set. They just threw that out the window. They scrapped it. Then they didn't have practice time to change it. They switched head coaches. It's chaos. It's almost typical Sacramento chaos, but it's chaos. I mean, how many head coaches has he had? De'Aaron Fox is on his 3rd head coach right now. He'll probably be on his 4th next season. Davion Mitchell will be on his 3rd head coach in 2 years. There's a good chance of that.
No.
Yeah, and that's just, that's the instability is always an issue. But at the same time, like when you're playing alongside Buddy Hield, you know what your job is. Your job is to play defense and let Buddy shoot the lights out. When you're playing alongside De'Aaron Fox, you know you're an off-ball shooter. I think what we saw against who was it they played last night? My brain.
Phoenix?
Oh, the Suns. Yeah. You saw him, was like, all right, man, it's your show. We ain't got nobody else. It's your show.
Yeah.
And what we saw was like, oh, look at that. He could do something more. And I said it in the beginning of the season, he's not the ball handler that we thought, that he's not ready to be the distributor that the Kings need, right? So the Kings needed a 3rd and 4th distributor, and when they only had Fox and Halliburton. And he just wasn't ready for that. But now he's starting to figure it out, that he's able to change speed and direction like at an elite rate, which I don't think any of us saw. There are moments where he really does look like Ty Lawson on the court, and that's a good thing, where he's like bugging all the way through the lane, like skipping across like he's skipping across water. You're just like, oh, look at that. That's crazy. And so I think that there is something there. And I mean, one of the problems is he's an older prospect, so you're not going to have as much patience. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to grade him harshly. Like, is he a B minus C plus rookie season? Probably. Is he above that? No. But that's.
I feel like you can be like, there's an element of being positive. Like you've seen adjustments. You've seen him grow. You just talked about being a distributor. He had a season high 9 assists or career high 9 assists, last night. We're starting to see some growth in the shot falling. He's the Kings Herald stat of 43.8% from 3 in the last 6 games. Mm-hmm. Like, so you see a little bit of evolution, and I guess 70 some odd games into a season for a rookie. I that's not a bad thing to walk away from, or that's not a bad thing to walk away with.
Yeah, he's growing.
You see some growth, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's setting himself up to have a good summer. He knows right now what he needs to do this summer.
What do you think his role is next year?
The same. I mean, to me, he's not the starting 2. Yeah. I think he's the first guard off the bench. There will be nights where he plays the entire 4th quarter, just locking up guys. Mm-hmm. And there'll be other nights where he's not big enough. Like the fact that you had to put him on Chris Middleton and you had to put him on Jason Tatum, that's just a huge disservice to him. I mean, like, there's nothing he can do against a guy who's, 6 inches taller and has a standing reach that's probably like 14 inches longer. There's nothing you can do. So
that shot was crazy.
Yeah,
that was nuts last night.
Yeah, I mean, I like the dunk attempt. Yeah, he's like, I can dunk. Like, he's like, I knew it was JaVale. If I didn't go in hard, I'm gonna just get swatted. So I thought that he has the right attitude, and he's a bulldog. Like, I do like what he's doing, but it's hard to be a bulldog when you're looking around and no one else is a bulldog, and you're gonna stand out really quickly as someone who's like almost trying to make people look bad, And there is a lot of like, as a rookie, you're trying to fit in to a role, but you're also trying to fit into a role with 15 to 17 other guys. And that doesn't always work out well. And I think, again, when you see Tyrese Halliburton leave the team, we're watching Fox, the evolution of Fox as a personality, come back to life. And I think it also opened the doors for guys like Davion to have more of a voice. And that's not a knock on Ty. It's actually, Ty was excellent. It's very specifically that, like when there are a lot of voices in the room, it's hard to just, if you're another voice, it just becomes white noise. If everyone's talking, it just becomes white noise.
It's funny that the ball just slipped out of his hands. Like I thought JaVale, like he caught it and the ball just kind of fell out. Like he went up so great, the ball just popped out of his hands. Otherwise, that would have been one for Kings history.
Oh man,
yeah, it's a Ronnie Price dunk.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Yeah, when Ronnie Price went baseline, I think on Carlos Boozer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. Like, holy cow. Yeah, he's got athleticism. He just doesn't have to use it all the time. That's not who he is as a player. And, a lot of guys have athleticism. You're just like, yeah, I didn't know, Trey Lyles can get up and hammer a ball in the middle of traffic. I didn't know that. But he's 6'8". He should be able to.
Did you go to the arena on Saturday?
I did not. And I started to write on it, but okay, so I don't like funerals, and I hate open casket funerals, and I'm certainly not going to an open casket funeral 6 years after the person died. And so to me,
I'm glad you said it, because I'm like, how many times are we going to say goodbye to this damn thing?
Yeah, I mean, I said my goodbyes before, and, it was emotional. Like the last games at Arco was emotional. I took a ton of pictures. I have all kinds of pictures in my phone from it. But I don't want to walk in there and see the whole upper bowl where, when I was young, that's the only place I could afford. Mm-hmm. The whole upper bowl, all the seats are stripped. And I think the Kings did an excellent job of like making it look cool and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that all the fans were happy because there was it wasn't even like Disneyland type, like line outside. It was like, I don't even know what to make of that.
I would have been hot if I got up there and had no standing.
It was like a pilgrimage, It was like, and I think for some people, they didn't get to say the goodbye that I did. And so that's fine. I'm not going to bag on people who went. I think it's spectacular. You do you, and I'm going to do me. And I certainly wouldn't want someone to like say, "Oh man, you cover the team. Why would you not go?" It's like, well, because I covered the team.
I already did it.
Like that was my place of work for 6 years. Like I was there every single day, and even before that, I went to hundreds of games. I saw some of the most iconic moments in that building live, and so yeah, I mean. To me,
James has slept in the clown tunnel. He has done it all.
I have not slept. I may have had a beer in the clown tunnel one night. The great Daryl Arata used to bring an ice chest for the last game of the season every year, and so and I think the guys do now too. So you have a beer and you sit there and like, oh, there's a clown tunnel. That's weird. But yeah. Like there are a lot of good memories there, but those memories, I have an outstanding memory for long-term things. My short-term memory is shot. I have no idea where like my wallet is right now. But my long-term memory is spectacular. And I want to remember that building for the life that it had, especially in big games where it just came to life and you could feel it. And like all the hairs on your arms and your neck would stand up. And that's an amazing place. And I would like to watch it blow up, but that's more of like a,
And that's the other thing. I really thought someone was hitting the detonation button on Saturday. And the fact that they didn't, like now we got to have a big gathering when they finally hit the detonation button. And let's just acknowledge Arco for what it is. We've got to let James go. Guys, it's the place that Macho Man Randy Savage proposed to Elizabeth. Like, let's not forget. Like, that's probably the biggest moment in the history of Arco. That and Milk-O-Mania with I take that back.
Yeah,
the Rock concert.
Yeah.
Those are James is familiar with none of these. Maybe the Macho Man and Elizabeth, but we got to let James go. James, we appreciate.
It's also the place where Drake came in the locker room. Like,
and it's the place where Kanye walked off. No, that was Golden One.
That was Golden One. Yeah.
That was Golden One. Scratch that. Edit that out of the live broadcast.